I've already said across multiple videos so far that you have to keep an eye out for Gorbis in the 2004 format. If you underestimate this Stage 1 70 HP Pokemon, then you will lose to it. Because Gorbis is pretty unassuming, you don't realize how powerful it can actually be until you've played against it. And I think the same thing applies to Medicham. An 80 HP fighting type stage 1, the first attack, Meditate, does 20 damage plus 10 more for each damage on the defending Pokemon. We've seen this attack before. Usually it's just set up as a really good 1-2 punch that either snowballs into really big damage or acts as a follow-up revenge killer. For 3 energy we have Chakra Points, which does 10 damage plus 10 more damage for each card in your opponent's hand. Doesn't seem like much until you remember how draw heavy this format actually is. If your opponent plays a Steven's Advice while sitting across the table from a Medicham, they have already messed up. For a lot of decks, including this one, you don't even need search power. You just need straight draw power because you have so many great options like Copycat and TV Reporter that you're going to be able to draw into whatever you need. You don't have to play supporters to specifically search out one card. So in a lot of cases, Chakra Point's gonna be dealing 60, 70, 80 damage for 3 energy, then it doesn't look so bad. And in Pokemon, getting cards out of your hand isn't as easy as other card games because supporters are once per turn, energy once per turn. You end up sitting with a lot of extra cards in your hand that normally you would just wait and play them turn to turn, but when you're up against a Medicham, you don't want a bunch of supporters in your hand, you don't want a bunch of energy in your hand. Medicham is a powerhouse, but it does need a little bit of support, and it gets that from Lanturn. Another 80 HP stage 1, first of all look at Lightning Strike, which is a 3 energy attack with base power 50, but if you discard all lightning energy attached to Lanturn, that becomes 90. Because this deck runs lightning and fighting type energy, that third energy used for Lightning Strike should always be fighting, that way you're only having to discard 2 energy instead of 3. We also have this energy grounding Poke Power where during your opponent's turn, if they knock out your active Pokemon, you get to take a basic energy card attached to that active Pokemon and put it onto Lanturn. So if your active Medicham is knocked out, you get to take a lightning or fighting energy off of that Medicham, put it onto Lanturn as it moves into the active position, and from that point you can easily set up a 90 damage follow-up attack. This deck is excellent at revenge kills, but it's also very efficient due to energy grounding because you're not losing all of your energy off of your active Pokemon whenever it gets knocked out. You're sending those to your bench. If you have multiple Lanturns on your bench, each one of them is getting an energy off of the knocked out active. So early game, it's going to feel like you're losing and having to play on the back foot, but then late game, you and your opponent will both realize that all of your Pokemon are fully energized and set up to do massive damage turn after turn after turn. Medicham and Lanturn don't inherently have any synergy together, but they are amazing at setting up one another for huge follow-up attacks. So right on into the Pokemon list, we're actually going to start at the bottom this time with Dunsparce because most of the time it is your ideal starter. Strike and Run is going to be amazing for grabbing all of your Meditites and Chinchous, getting those into play as fast as possible. That way you have your setup, you're not having to dig through your deck at all because as you can see, the rest of the Pokemon lineup is pretty simple. Aside from Dunsparce, you just have the Medicham line and the Lanturn line. So we'll go back up here to Meditite. And the reason I said most decks want to start with Dunsparce is that this deck doesn't mind starting with Meditite or Chinchou. Meditite can attack for 1 energy, deal some chip damage, doesn't even have to be a fighting energy, and that's going to set you up next turn for a little bonus damage off of Medicham's Meditate. Meditite also has Meditate, so for some reason you can't find the Medicham. It's going to be rare, you will always find the Medicham, but in case you don't, you can still meditate off of Meditite while you're in the works of getting a Medicham into play. There are multiple options for Chinchou. I like this one just because, again, a colorless energy attack just to get some chip damage out to potentially set up a future Meditate attack, get a little extra damage on there. But I like this Chinchou because Spark can also be a deciding factor late in the game. This is all you have left. You attach that second energy to it, you use Spark, and you actually get some sniping chip damage in, which may be able to target some of your opponent's Pokemon that already have a ton of damage counters on them from Lanturn or Medicham, and this Chinchou is all you need to get those final damage counters on there and get those key knockouts. And then as for Lanturn, we've already talked about why it complements Medicham so well. So the Pokemon lineup itself doesn't need a ton of explanation. We just got 4 of everything. The trainer base is extremely straightforward too. As you can see, just a lot of 4-ofs. You got 4 Copycat, 4 Steven's Advice, 4 TV Reporter, so much draw power that we don't even need to worry about search power. Between these 3 playsets of cards here, you are going to be able to find every basic, every evolution card you need to get going. You're going to have plenty of energy in hand. The rest of what this deck needs is below. Starting with Pokemon Reversal, got 4 copies there. This is just Gust, but you have to flip a coin to see if it works. It goes without saying, this is going to help you yank out some of your opponent's key Pokemon and knock them out early, or if your opponent's Pokemon has some damage on it, they think they're going to be sneaky and retreat to the bench to depower your Meditate follow-up, well, you just yank it back into the active position and hit them for massive damage anyway. 4 copies of Strength Charm in here just to even out the math. Whenever you're just 10 short, 1 damage counter short of knocking out your opponent's Pokemon, well, Strength Charm has your back. It can jump in there, it can deal that extra damage. Or early game, if you're looking to set up an even bigger Meditate next turn, you can go ahead and put Strength Charm on a Meditate, deal 20 damage instead of 10 damage. That's going to help boost next turn. It's just an all-around great card for a donk deck like this. Another way to help you even out the math between your attacks is going to be Desert Ruins. Between turns, it's going to place a damage counter on all Pokemon EX that have more than 100 HP. That's going to be any EX that you're playing against, and a lot of times this is going to be getting you some knockouts. If Strength Charm isn't enough and your opponent's still hanging on by 10 HP, even if they're on the bench, they're going to get hit by Desert Ruins. They're going to take that 10 damage, you're going to take some prizes. And yeah, it only applies to Pokemon EX, but those are generally the matchups where the HP is a little too high to be getting 2-hit KOs. And so Desert Ruins is going to help turn those 2 hits that you are getting into KOs between turns. Another really important piece of this puzzle is going to be the double rainbow energy, because early game, say you have a Medicham in the active position, it gets knocked out, so you move one of those fighting energy onto Lanturn. When you move the Lanturn into the active position, it's not going to have enough energy to attack, even with your energy per turn that you get on your turn. What you do is you just go ahead and drop a double rainbow on it, deal that 90 damage, and then discard the double rainbow energy. And then you still have your energy per turn that you can attach to another Medicham that you're getting set up on the bench, or just another Lanturn. Double rainbow is its own form of energy acceleration early game, just because it's going to allow you to get off these huge attacks much earlier than your opponent would expect them. And then even when those Pokemon are knocked out, you're losing the double rainbow from Lanturn anyway, but any Lanturn you have in play are gonna be recycling 1 energy each anyway between those turns when your active is knocked out. So it really helps that energy snowball get going while you're also snowballing with damage spread across all of your opponent's Pokemon. Or in the case that they don't have a bunch of Pokemon in play, you're just knocking out their Pokemon back to back. And then to fill out the rest of the deck, there are 7 lightning energy and 6 fighting energy. You guys know what to do with those. Forgot to mention it earlier, but instead of just calling this deck like Medicham Lanturn or Lanturn Medicham, a lot of people back in the day just called it LAME. LA from Lanturn, ME from Medicham. So for certain deck listings, you may see that as the title of the deck. As far as matchups go, this deck does struggle against anything that can heal, because that kind of circumvents everything that you're trying to do with setting up these big Meditate and Lightning Strike attacks. So there can be quite a bit of challenge against decks like Wailord, or even these Fossil Stall decks where you are racking up damage and getting all these knockouts, but you're not able to take prizes for them. I do think it has a fairly solid matchup against Blaziken just because of the amount of damage you're able to do to those Delcatties that you can gust out, and those 100 HP Firestarter Blazikens that Lightning Strike is going to be able to deal with Strength Charm. Because Medicham is so momentum based, Milotic is an absolute killer against this deck, especially since any Milotic players are not going to let you snipe a Feebas. They're going to rare candy straight into Milotic. A lot of builds of this deck also include 2 or 3 copies of Warp Point just to help out with the relatively high retreat costs on Lanturn. It's also just an extra resource for swapping out your opponent's Pokemon at the same time you do that for yourself. You'll also see a lot of builds include 2 or 3 copies of Oracle. Because there is so much draw power in this deck, you can smooth out your draws and get exactly what you want by setting those up with an Oracle. but I found that I almost always got what I needed from just drawing a bunch of cards, so the Oracle was a little unnecessary. These designers really just went, you know the Pokemon that we gave big bouncy boob pants to? Let's just put nipples on there. Anyway, that's the deck. Let me know what you thought below. Let me know if you have any experience running this deck. Let me know what kind of content you want to see in the future. If you like what I'm doing on this channel, go check out my other videos. I got tons of Pokemon TCG content on there. I truly appreciate everyone for watching, and I hope to see all of you at the next one. Bye.